we going to take turns or?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just volunteering whenever.
Okay. So
except for that first one. That first
Right.
one.
Okay, we'll come back to that. All right, so let's start. So anyone who feels so moved can read at any time.
Praise be to thee, O Lord my God, for guiding me into the horizon of thy revelation and for causing me to be mentioned by thy name. I beseech thee, by the spreading rays of the day star of thy providence, and by the billowing waves of the ocean of thy mercy, to grant that my speech may bear a trace of the influence of thine own exalted word, attracting thereby the realities of all created things. Powerful art thou to do what thou willest, through thy wondrous and incomparable utterance. Baha'u'llah.
Whose light is these words?
The utterance of God is a lamp, whose light is these words. Ye are the fruits of one tree, and the leaves of one branch. Deal ye one with another with the utmost love and harmony, with friendliness and fellowship. He who is the day star of the truth beareth me witness. So powerful is the light of unity that it can illumine the whole earth. The one true God, he who knoweth all things, himself testifieth to the truth of these words. Exert yourself that ye may attain the transcendent, the most sublime station, the station excuse me, that can ensure the protection and security of all mankind. This goal excelleth or every other goal, and this aspiration is the monarch of all aspiration. Baha'u'llah, Epistle of Son of the Wolf.
Blessed is the spot, and the house, and the place, and the city, and the heart, and the mountain, and the refuge, and the cave, and the valley, and the land, and the sea, and the island, and the meadow, where mention of God hath been made, and his praise glorified, glorified, glorified. Blessed is the spot, and the house, and the place, and the city, and the heart, and the mountain, and the refuge, and the cave, and the valley, and the land, and the sea, and the island, and the meadow, where mention of God hath been made, and his praise
I yield thee such thanks as can enable them that recognize thy unity to scale the heights of thy love, and to cause such as are devoted to thee to ascend unto the paradise of thy presence. I yield thee such thanks as can satisfy the wants of all such as seek thee, and realize the aims of them that have recognized thee. I yield thee such thanks as can blot out from the hearts of men all suggestions of limitations and inscribe the signs of thy unity. Baha'u'llah.
Cleave unto that which draweth you together and uniteth you. This verily is the most exalted word, which the mother book hath sent down and revealed unto you.
Hey guys, Waverly's going to read hers. You don't have to go back to the slide because she has it here in the book.
I'm Waverly. Oh God, guide me, protect me, make of me a shining lamp and a brilliant star. You art the mighty and the powerful.
Thank you, Abe. And I'll go ahead and read this one. Say, let truthfulness and courtesy be your adorning. Suffer not yourselves to be deprived of the robe of forbearance and justice, that the sweet savors of holiness may be wafted from your hearts upon all created things. Baha'u'llah.
Say, beware, O people of Baha, lest ye walk in the ways of them whose words differ from their deeds. Gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah.
Thy name is my healing, O my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing, and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou verily art the all bountiful, the all-knowing. and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing, and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou verily art the all bountiful, art the all knowing, the all wise, the all wise, the all wise. The all wise.
O Son of Beauty, by my spirit and by my favor, by my mercy and by my beauty, all that I have revealed unto thee with the tongue of power, and have written for thee with the pen of might, hath been in accordance with thy capacity and understanding, not with my state and the melody of my voice. Baha'u'llah.
Your eyes have been illumined, your ears are attentive, your heart's knowing. You must be free from prejudice and fanaticism, beholding no differences between the races and religions. You must look to God, for he is the real shepherd and all humanity are his sheep. He loves them and loves them equally. As this is true, should the sheep quarrel among themselves? They should manifest gratitude and thankfulness to God. And the best way to thank God is to love one another. Abdul Baha.
O Lord, grant thine infinite bestowals, and let the light of thy guidance shine. Illumine the eyes, gladden the hearts with abiding joy. Confer a new spirit upon all people and bestow upon them eternal life. Unlock the gates of true understanding and let the light of faith shine resplendent. Gather all people beneath the shadow of thy bounty and cause them to unite in harmony so that they may become as the rays of one sun, as the waves of one ocean, and as the fruit of one tree. May they drink from the same fountain. May they be refreshed by the same breeze. May they receive illumination from the same source of light. Thou art the giver, the merciful, the omnipotent. Abdul Baha.
Okay, at this point, if anyone would like to share any additional prayers, please feel free.
I want to share a healing prayer for one of our neighbors. His name is George, and he's in kind of a dire situation. He has COVID and has been in the hospital for 2 weeks. He's now on 100% oxygen, and the next step is a ventilator. So this prayer is for him. O God, my God, I beg of thee by the ocean of thy healing, and by the splendors of the day star of thy grace, and by thy name through which thou didst subdue thy servants, and by the pervasive power of thy most exalted word, and the potency of thy most august pen, and by thy mercy that hath preceded the creation of all who are in heaven and on earth, to purge me with the waters of thy bounty from every affliction and disorder, and from all weakness and feebleness. Thou seest, O my Lord, thy suppliant waiting at the door of thy bounty, and him who hath set his hopes on thee, clinging to the cord of thy generosity. Deny him not, I beseech thee, the things he seeketh from the ocean of thy grace and the day star of thy loving kindness. Powerful art thou to do what pleaseth thee. There is none other God save thee, the ever forgiving, the most generous, Baha'u'llah.
Good morning. Hi, this is Karen. I'd like to say a prayer for the departed for a dear Baha'i from Western Michigan, Walt Manderfield. I don't know if any of you know him. He was a great Baha'i storyteller. He was known as Mr. Green Jeans and very popular, great guy. And he passed away in yesterday, actually. So the Baha'is of Western Michigan are actually saying prayers right now for him. So I'd like to kind of amplify that by saying one here in Texas. Oh my God, verily thy servant, humble before the majesty of thy divine supremacy, lowly at the door of thy oneness, hath believed in thee and in thy verses, hath testified to thy word, hath been enkindled with the fire of thy love, hath been immersed in the depths of the ocean of thy knowledge, hath been attracted by thy breezes, hath relied upon thee, hath turned his face unto thee, hath offered his supplication to thee, and hath been assured of thy pardon and forgiveness. He hath abandoned this mortal life and hath flown to the kingdom of immortality, yearning for the favor of meeting thee. O Lord, glorify his station, shelter him under the pavilion of thy supreme mercy. Cause him to enter thy glorious paradise and perpetuate his existence in thine exalted rose garden, that he may plunge into the sea of light in the world of mysteries. Verily thou art the generous, the powerful, the forgiver, and the bestower.
This prayer is for everyone's strength. Glorified be thy name, O Lord. In whom shall I take refuge while thou art in truth my God and my beloved? And to whom shall I turn for shelter while thou art my Lord and my possessor? And toward whom shall I flee while thou art in truth my master and my sanctuary? And whom shall I implore while thou art in truth my treasure and the goal of my desire? And through whom shall I plead before thee, while thou art in truth my highest aspiration and supreme desire? Every hope hath been frustrated, save the yearning for thy heavenly grace, and every door is barred except the portal leading to the wellspring of thy blessing. I beseech thee, O my Lord, by thy most effulgent splendor, before whose brightness every soul humbly boweth down and prostrates itself in adoration for thy sake, a splendor before whose radiance fire is turned into light, the dead are brought to life, and every difficulty is changed to ease. I entreat thee by this great, this wondrous splendor, and by the glory of thy exalted sovereignty, O thou, who art the Lord of indomitable power, to transform us through thy bounty into that which thou thyself doth possess, and enable us to become fountains of thy light, and graciously vouchsafe unto us that which beseemeth the majesty of thy transcendent dominion. For unto thee I have raised my hands, O Lord, and in thee I have found sheltering support, O Lord, and unto thee I resigned myself, O Lord. And upon thee I place my whole reliance, O Lord, and by thee I am strengthened, O Lord. Verily, there is no power nor strength except in thee. The Bob.
All right, Turner and I are going to sing God is Sufficient in Arabic. Go Allahu yakfi an kulli shay'in. Go Allahu yakfi an kulli shay'in. Wa'aflalam hayram yatawakkalu mutawakkilu yatawakkalu mutawakkilu. All right. Is there anyone else who'd like to say a prayer or anything? Wonderful. Well, it is good to see everyone. Welcome to our Sunday program. Now, most of you on here have known me for a long time, and you know that I have a quirky sense of humor, particularly towards religious things. If you want to know where I got that from, it is from my godmother, who's on this call, my aunt, Susan Rowland. You'll see her on there. Now, I'm going to put Susan on the spot. Susan once gave a talk at a church and dressed up as a clown, right, Susan? She was a professional clown for a number of years.
More than once, yeah.
Yes, yes. So you gave a whole, what was it called? Not a sermon, right? But
Well, actually, I did a children's message at a Methodist church.
Nice. Just as a clown, right?
Yes.
Nice, nice. All right. So if you know where I get my quirky sense of humor for religion, all things religious, you can point to her as the source of that. Fantastic. So today we have our dear friend, Ajit Giani, who is my partner in crime on Zoom recently. We have been collaborating with the firesides and such. And he had told me a number of months back that he had a two-part presentation about the life of Abdul Baha that he was interested in giving. And I was so excited to be able to schedule him. So if you don't know Ajit, Ajit is originally from India. He lived for a number of years in Chicago and Houston. And if you Google his name, Ajit's going to kill me for saying this, but if you Google his name, you can find a picture of him without a mustache on Google Images, which is a little known thing. He would not let me use the picture of him without a mustache for promo for these firesides. So, but he is a very knowledgeable, wonderful soul who I've known for many years. And he has, as I always mention, he has impeccable taste in restaurants. So if he ever asks you out to lunch or anything like that, please join him. You'll always have a good meal. And his daughter lives right behind me, and she too has impeccable taste. So, so with that, Ajit currently serves on the Interreligious Ministries Board, iACT. So that takes a lot of his time recently. So he is the person to talk about what's going on in Austin between all the various faiths as well. So, but today he's focusing on the history, a historical look at Abdul Baha. All right, Ajit, take it away.
Okay. And by the way, I got this email from you this morning, so thanks for that. I'm going to share a PowerPoint presentation. Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay. Can you make me co-host so I can share screen?
Should be good.
Should be good?
I think so, yeah.
Here we go. All right. By the way, feel free to interrupt, ask questions, make comments. This is by far one of my favorite pictures of Abdul Baha. I mean, I absolutely am in love with this picture. And I know wherever you go, this is the picture, especially in the Holy Land, this is the picture that adorns pretty much every building that you go to. So what I want to do this morning is to talk a little bit about Abdul Baha, tell you a little bit about him. Perhaps everything I tell you, you already know. Perhaps that's true. If so, hey, it's worth repeating. So here goes. As you know, Baha'u'llah and his wife, Asi Khanum, had 3 surviving children. And that Abdul Baha was born on May 23rd, 1844, the same night, the same evening that the Bab declared his mission to Mullah Hussein in Shiraz. We don't ever celebrate Abdul Baha's birthday because he insisted we not do so. That he declared the Day of the Covenant as something to celebrate in his memory, but we don't ever celebrate his birthday. He did not want us to do that. While he was called Abbas, and the name Abbas comes from Baha'u'llah's grandfather, from Abdul Baha's grandfather, because his grandfather was named Abbas. So he was named after his grandfather. By the way, for some of you who might not know this, know that Baha'u'llah also had a brother named Mirza Mehdi who died in infancy. So Baha'u'llah named his oldest son Abbas and his younger son Mirza Mehdi after his brother. So Baha'u'llah, as you know, was from the family of Mirza Buzurg and Nuri or Mirza Abbas and Nuri, one of the fairly well-known families of Mazindaran. But you must also know that Baha'u'llah's wife, Asi Khanum, who also came from the state, province of Mazindaran, came from a family of Yalrudis, Y-A-L-R-U-D-I. Asiya Khanum Yalrudi was the daughter of Mirza Ismail Yalrudi. And that family was by far much wealthier than the family of Abdul Baha and Baha'u'llah. So they were really, really wealthy. So when I talk about the challenges and the difficulties that Baha'u'llah and his family faced, traveling from place to place with infants, you also should bear in mind that those difficulties were much harder for Asiya Khanum because she had grown up in such a state of luxury. I mean, she really literally had grown up in the lap of luxury. So all the deprivations and the imprisonment and everything that they went through were much harder for Asiya Khanum. Baha'u'llah, as you know, was known as the father of the poor in his infancy, in his young youthful days, because he focused on taking care of the poor and the needy. And Baha'u'llah was not at all interested in becoming a minister at the court of the Shah. The other thing that I want you to understand is that at the time, Mirza Buzurg Abbas Nuri died in 1837. By the time he had died in 1837, he had fallen out of favor with the Persian government. I mean, he was literally out of favor with the government. And there was probably an opportunity for Baha'u'llah to follow that, pursue that path, but perhaps there was not. So these are the early years of Abdul Baha's life from 1844 to 1853, that he really spent a life of luxury. He spent a life of great comfort. But after Baha'u'llah's open advocacy of the Babi dispensation and his openness in teaching the Babi faith, he was thrown into the Siachal of Tehran, and life became tremendously difficult for the family of Baha'u'llah. This probably is not as well known as the fact that at a young age, Abdul Baha suffered from tuberculosis, that he overcame it. He overcame his childhood illness, but it did somewhat affect him over the rest of his life. Perhaps some of you know this, perhaps some of you don't, that Abdul Baha really liked to walk. He really liked to exercise. Some of you might know that Abdul Baha, when living in Akka, used to love to go swimming in the ocean. I can't imagine Abdul Baha swimming in the ocean. Nevertheless, he loved going swimming. Does anybody know what Shukri Effendi did for exercise? Anybody want to make a comment on that?
Tennis.
He played tennis. That's absolutely correct. Shukri Effendi loved playing tennis. Sometimes it is hard to imagine Abdul Baha going swimming or Shukri Effendi playing tennis, but nevertheless, that's how it was. Abdul Baha, when he saw his father in the dungeon, was tremendously distressed. And Baha'u'llah was in fact distressed that Abdul Baha had come to see him in the prison and insisted that the young man be taken away. But Abdul Baha was heartbroken when he saw his father in that condition. Now, I want to point out a couple of things here. Baha'u'llah's family, the Nuri family, was detested and hated by a woman named Mehd-e-Ulia. And Mehd-e-Ulia was Nasiruddin Shah's mother. She felt that Mirza Abbas had insulted her late husband and said something nasty about her late husband. And so she was tremendously upset at the whole Nuri family, Baha'u'llah's father, Baha'u'llah, etc. So when Baha'u'llah was to come out of the Siachal, Mehd-e-Ulia insisted that he be executed. All the prominent Baha'is, prominent Babis of the time, all the letters of the living, the Bab, the uncle of the Bab, Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali, all these Tahir, all these prominent Babis had been executed. The only prominent Babi left was Baha'u'llah. And the Queen Mother insisted that he be executed. Baha'u'llah had a brother-in-law named Mirza Majid-e-Ahi. Mirza Majid-Ahi, A-H-I, in case you Google his name. Mirza Majid-e-Ahi was employed by the Russian consulate. And he went to the Russian consulate and asked for them to intervene to save Baha'u'llah's life. Historically, dear friends, the Persian governments, the Iranian Empire, went to war with Russia twice, in 1820 and 1826. After both these wars with Russia, they signed two treaties, and they're known as the Treaty of Gulistan and the Treaty of Turkmenchay. But in essence, in both these treaties, Iran gave up a huge chunk of her territory to Russia, Imperial Tsarist Russia. And Russia still had ambitions of expanding further into Iran. So when the Russian consulate told the Iranian Persian prime minister that will you please make sure that Baha'u'llah, Mirza Hussein Ali, is released and not executed, that was an opposing view compared to what the Queen Mother had. Nevertheless, the Persian government was not ready to get Russia upset at them and have the Russian army march in again and take over the rest of Iran. So they agreed to let Baha'u'llah go, under the condition that he would leave Iran and not live in Iranian territory. Now, Baha'u'llah had a choice. He was invited by the Russian government to come to Russia, but instead he chose to go to Baghdad. For those of you that think about how quick things have changed, recall that Baha'u'llah started walking with his family from Tehran, headed to Baghdad, and he started on December the 12th, 1852. And he arrived in Baghdad April the 8th, 1853. Almost exactly 4 months later, he arrived in Baghdad, going on foot. By the way, that's a 90-minute flight today. And I'm just trying to put in perspective how things have changed. When Baha'u'llah talks about the oneness of mankind, not only does he talk about the oneness of mankind, but I insist that he has provided us the means to achieve the oneness of mankind. So it was a 4-month march. In Baghdad, Baha'u'llah tried to bring the Baha'i community together, tried to create unity and cohesiveness in the Baha'i community, and to a large degree, Baha'u'llah succeeded, and everybody came to recognize Baha'u'llah as somebody special, somebody extraordinary, even though Baha'u'llah had not openly announced himself as the manifestation of God, but people had started to recognize that. If you read the Kitab-e-Iqan now, we're reading it 150, 170 years later, it is clear that in the Kitab-e-Iqan, Baha'u'llah, which was written before his formal announcement, it is very clear that Baha'u'llah in the Kitab-e-Iqan is announcing himself, telling everybody that he is the manifestation of God, the next manifestation of God, the manifestation that the Bab talks about.
Can you press F5 and go full screen mode? One of our YouTube viewers wants to see. You press F5, you should go full screen.
I should go full screen?
Yeah, press F5 on your keyboard.
Function 5. I'm looking for it. I have no idea where it is. F5. Okay, F5. Okay. That work?
Let's see. Oh, no. Sorry.
I didn't do anything.
Could cancel. Or you could go up at the top, slideshow, click on slideshow. And then it should be from current slide.
Mm-hmm.
From current slide. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Abdul Baha, when Baha'u'llah was starting with Baha'u'llah's time and the family's time in Baghdad, Abdul Baha essentially became Baha'u'llah's right hand. He spoke for Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah sent him out on missions. He wrote books defending the Baha'i faith. So Abdul Baha basically became really starting to, you could see, people could see Abdul Baha flowering into what he later became. But from a very young age, it was obvious who Abdul Baha was, how his father looked to him. As you know, in 1868, 1867, 1868, they were exiled to Constantinople, and from Constantinople, they were exiled to, 1863, they were exiled to Constantinople. After 4 months in Constantinople, they were exiled to Adrianople, and in 1868, they were exiled from Adrianople to Akka. And all this is pretty straightforward. You all know this pretty straight. Abdul Baha became the person that not only Baha'u'llah, but his whole family depended on Abdul Baha, depended on Abdul Baha to deal with the outside world, to deal with the public, to answer questions, even to the point that when we talk about going shopping, in prison, they used to have to go out to the marketplace to go shopping. Everybody told Abdul Baha what they wanted, and he went to the market. Some of you remember the story of the young man that carried Baha'u'llah's message to the king. He did not know who Baha'u'llah was or what Baha'u'llah looked like, had no idea, but he had walked all the way from Iran to Akka to meet with Baha'u'llah. And while walking in the marketplace, he spotted Abdul Baha and followed Abdul Baha, walked up to this young fellow and said, "Hey, where have you been? Baha'u'llah has been waiting for you for a while." And so this Abdul Baha's appearance in the marketplace served lots of purposes, but one of the purposes it served was that people who walked from Iran to Akka almost always met Abdul Baha in the marketplace, and where it was possible, Abdul Baha was able to bring these people to meet with Baha'u'llah when Baha'u'llah was willing to meet with people. It was here that his brother died in 1870 in the prison of Akka, and Abdul Baha saw to his burial. It was here in 1872, I think it was, that Abdul Baha got married to Munira Khanum. By the way, Munira Khanum's name was Fatimeh, but she was given the title Munira by Baha'u'llah at the time of their marriage. Munira meaning the effulgent one, the shining one, I guess. I can't think of a good translation for Munira. Abdul Baha and Munira Khanum had 9 children, 8 girls and 1 boy. And only 4 of Abdul Baha's daughters survived into adulthood. So, what is the station of Abdul Baha? He called himself Abdul Baha, the servant of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah called him the master. Baha'u'llah called him the most holy, the most mighty branch. And please remember the word branch, because I'll come back to the word branch next week. It is an important concept. Baha'u'llah appointed him the most mighty branch. And in our faith, the Bab, Baha'u'llah, and Abdul Baha occupy the three, their age, their time is the age of prophecy, prophethood. Though Abdul Baha was not a prophet, though Abdul Baha denounced anybody that called him a prophet, nevertheless, he has a station that is incomparable to anyone else. He had a unique station. Baha'u'llah liked to call him the mystery of God, Sirullah. I'm going to script this. Okay. As you know, Baha'u'llah passed away in 1892. After Baha'u'llah's passing in 1892 and the reading of his will and testament, the Kitab-e-Hal, it was clear that he had appointed Abdul Baha as a successor. But not everybody jumped up and accepted Abdul Baha as a successor. It was around this time in 1899 when Abdul Baha had arranged for the remains of the Bab to be brought to Akka. It was here in 1899 and 1900 where the first trickle of Western pilgrims had started to arrive in Akka. When Abdul Baha would go out and greet these pilgrims and bring them to the shrine of Baha'u'llah, there was often people, family members that would stand around and jeer and shout and holler at the pilgrims and at Abdul Baha. These were people who, for whatever reason, opposed Abdul Baha. And it was around this time in 1900, 1901 that Abdul Baha decided to relocate himself from Baji to a home that many of you have been to. It's called the home of Abdullah Pasha. It's one of those great big homes with a lot of different sections to it, where Abdul Baha lived with 4 of his daughters. That's the home in which Shokhi Effendi was born. That is also the home in which Abdul Baha revealed a book basically. It's called Some Answered Question, but it was here in the house of Abdullah Pasha that Laura Clifford Barney came to meet with Abdul Baha and asked him a series of questions to which he gave answers and which became Some Answered Questions. So, but by 1900, Abdul Baha had basically decided that he didn't want to live in Baji because of all the challenges and problems. Now, Abdul Baha in the year 1901, 1900 started to build the shrine of the Bab. Of course, he couldn't do very much with it because he was still nominally at least a prisoner of the Ottoman government. So he could move around within the Ottoman Empire around the Holy Land, but really he couldn't do very much. He was quite limited. In the year 1908, the Ottoman Empire sent a commission of inquiry to investigate what Abdul Baha was doing in building the shrine of the Bab. And before they could complete their inquiry, before they could do anything else, there was a revolt in Constantinople. It's called, generally now described as a young Turkish revolt. And the young Turks actually took a shot at the king, Ottoman king. Sultan Abdul Hamid was slightly injured, not killed, but slightly injured. But the fact that somebody would take a shot at him gave him quite a fright. And so he gave into some of the demands of the young Turks. And one of the demands of the young Turks was that all political prisoners be set free. Therefore, in 1908, for the very first time in his life since he was 8 years old, Abdul Baha was finally a free man. He was completely free, no restrictions. He could go wherever he wanted to. He got himself a Turkish passport right then. And as you know, he then started to travel. But the first thing that he did in the year 1903, March 21st, 1903, he laid to rest the remains of the Bab on Mount Carmel at a site that had been selected, in fact, by Baha'u'llah himself. It was here on Mount Carmel that Baha'u'llah, in 1891, his last visit to Akka, to Haifa, had revealed the Lawh-e-Carmel, the tablet of Carmel, which I will talk about in a little bit. But Baha'u'llah had picked the site for the remains of the Bab to be laid to rest. And before Abdul Baha could do anything, go anywhere, talk to anybody, his first mission was to lay the remains of the Bab to rest on Mount Carmel. And as you know further, I'll talk about this possibly next week, the Shukri Effendi talks about Abdul Baha and his accomplishments and described this task, the laying to rest of the remains of the Bab, as one of the most important accomplishments of Abdul Baha's ministry. By the way, does anybody have any questions or comments? Feel free to interrupt. Since I can't see your questions, Chris will read them. Questions, comments? Okay. So, having laid to rest the remains of the Bab, accomplishing one of its most important objectives, he then, in 1910, starts to travel. 1909, he's laid the Bab to rest, now he's going to travel. So he travels, he goes to Egypt. He comes back from Egypt and he sails on to France. He comes back from France and then takes a really long trip to America. What is his name? Please. I don't know. Chris, what, somebody trying to send a message? What's going on?
Oh, no, somebody just joined. It's all right.
Okay. So he essentially then starts to travel. Friend, when he arrived in America in 1912, spring of 1912, March of 1912, he was 68 years old. He was a very old 68. He had suffered prison, hunger, famines. He suffered all kinds of deprivation. His whole life, most of his adult life, he had really started out as a young child with tuberculosis. So here he arrives at the age of 68, not ever having spoken in public. He would sit around a table and talk to people, yes, but to get up in front of a large church, a synagogue, a group of several hundred people, to get up in front with a microphone and give a talk, Abdul Baha had never done that before till he did it in America. in 1912. Think about that. And yet, for those people, I'm sure some of you met people who were here alive when Abdul Baha was in America. And when you hear them talk, there's never this sense that Abdul Baha was uncomfortable or intimidated by the notion of getting up in front of a group of people and giving a talk. He never was. And for those of you that want to know what Abdul Baha said to the Americans, read Promulgation of Universal Peace. Each one of his talks was transcribed in English. Luckily for us, many of those talks were also transcribed in Persian, word for word. What he said, somebody wrote down. And the guy that did a lot of this work was a guy named Mirza Mahmud Zarqani. Nevertheless, he wrote down word for word what Abdul Baha said. And those of you that know, there was a publication in the year 1913, 1914 called Talks of Abdul Baha, volume 1, 2, 3. Those were the talks that were captured by the English translator. So Abdul Baha spoke in Farsi, somebody translated into English. The other guy wrote down all the notes of what the English speaker was saying, and those were published. Then at some point, those books were pulled off the bookshelf for the Baha'is, and Promulgation of Universal Peace was published because Promulgation of Universal Peace was based on the Persian. They took the Persian and did a translation, and often, frankly, frequently, what Abdul Baha was saying and what the English guy wrote down in English were not all exactly the same. And for those of you that have done any kind of translation from one language to another, recognize that translation is very difficult of any kind. But translating spiritual ideas and spiritual concepts from one language to another is like translating poetry. You just can't get it to rhyme. And Abdul Baha's talks, thankfully, where we had them in Farsi, have now been retranslated. And I recommend Promulgation of Universal Peace to you. Strongly recommend that every one of you have that book on your bookshelf. There were times, friends, that he gave a talk that would blow your mind. He said things that you would go, really? He said that? Yeah, he did say that. He went to a Jewish synagogue. Why am I saying Jewish synagogue? He went to a synagogue. He went to a synagogue in Philadelphia at the synagogue of Rabbi Weiss. And then he got up there and said, you know, the Jews have suffered so much, they should accept Christ as God's prophet. And if they'd done that, accepted him as a prophet, perhaps a lot of this thing that has happened to the Jews wouldn't happen. There is an eyewitness account of that the people in the congregation got up and they used to wear those watches on the chain. They were called fobs or something like that. People stood up and pointed to the clock and hissed at him for saying that. He didn't say what was popular to say. He said what he thought was the right thing to say. And then he goes to Montreal and gives the exact same talk. He said, I spoke at the synagogue in Philadelphia, at Rabbi Weiss's synagogue, and here's what I said. I want to repeat it for you. He had gotten booed in Philadelphia, and he went out and gave the exact same talk in Montreal. He spoke at the NAACP convention, and he said the blacks should show gratitude to the whites because they fought to free the slaves. So many of the whites fought to free the slaves. And he told the white, you should get rid of your condensation and attitude that you have to this black and accept them as your brother. These were not necessarily the most popular. And by the way, I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not saying it exactly the way Abdul Baha said it. Nevertheless, one of the things you recognize that he was not afraid of saying what he thought was the right thing to say. He met a whole bunch of very prominent, important people. For those of us that come from India, his meeting with Rabindranath Tagore was an important thing because Rabindranath Tagore was the first Indian who won the Nobel Prize for Literature. And the Indians are very proud of Rabindranath Tagore. He's the one that wrote the national anthem that is played in Bangladesh today. He wrote the song that became the national anthem for Bangladesh. Where was I? Right here. He predicted the First World War. He clearly told Europe that they better start backing down and not arming themselves because there is a disaster awaiting them. Anybody remember Baha'u'llah's tablet to Kaiser Wilhelm? Anybody read that tablet? He says, Baha'u'llah says to Kaiser Wilhelm, I see the banks of the Rhine covered with blood and gore. And then he says, Hammer, and then he says, ye shall have another turn. Banks of the Rhine meaning Germany. Baha'u'llah had 50 years earlier predicted that Germany would suffer from the war. And Abdul Baha was saying the same thing. And Baha'u'llah's message to all the leaders and kings and queens of the world was, stop wasting your money on weapons. Start using that money to feed the poor, the hungry, take care of the hungry. That was the main message. And Abdul Baha emphasized that message again and again, wherever he went in Europe, in America, etc. All right. Now I'm having a little bit of, hang on, I'm back. Now, Abdul Baha continued to write, continued to travel, continued to work. After he came to America and went back to America around the year 1917, he revealed 14 tablets that were called the Tablets of the Divine Plan. And the Tablets of the Divine Plan still today form the basis of all Baha'i plans, the 9-year plan, the 10-year crusade, etc. Everything is based around this, the Tablets of the Divine Plan. Friends, when I served in Haifa, I was sitting at lunch with somebody. You know, the lunch was in the ITC building. We would all get together and everybody, house members, everybody would come together and we would find a place to sit and eat. I was talking to this young fellow and I asked him where he was from, and I think he said Vanuatu was one of the islands in the Pacific. And I said, where is that? He said to me, have you read Tablets of the Divine Plan? I go, yeah. He goes, well, it's mentioned in the Tablets of the Divine Plan. Abdul Baha in the Tablets of the Divine Plan mentions all these different countries, different nations, different places where we needed to go, where we needed to establish the Baha'i faith. And to be honest with you, there are places in the Tablets of the Divine Plan where I would read the name, but I have no idea where these things are, where these cities are, where these countries are. But Abdul Baha wrote specifically about some of these. How much more time do I have, Chris?
We are at 11:41. So.
Okay. 10 more minutes?
Yep.
Okay. He passed away, Abdul Baha, as you know, in 1921. Before he died, of course, he knew that his life was coming to an end. And about 6 months before, he wrote a tablet. It was addressed to one of the Afnan, one of the family of the Bab, and in which he basically, essentially seems to be praying for his own departure. He basically says, "Oh Lord, my bones are weakened and the whole hair glisten on my head, and I have now reached old age, failing in my powers. No strength is there left in me wherewith to arise and serve the loved ones. O Lord my God, hasten my ascension unto thy sublime threshold, and my arrival at the door of thy grace beneath the shadow of the most great mercy." This, friends, this letter was written, this tablet was written at the passing of Mirza Muhammad Agha. And Mirza Muhammad Agha was the father of Hassan Baluzi. And Hassan Baluzi, as you know, was in fact an Afnan from both the mother's side and the father's side, meaning related to the Baha. Anybody know how Hassan Baluzi became a Baha'i? You know, he was a Muslim till he was 17 years old. Hassan Baluzi became a Baha'i on meeting with Shukri Effendi. He was from a very wealthy family. His father was the Persian minister to all the Gulf states, had a title, Muwaqqidul Dawle, and he was on his way to study in London and live in London. And he stopped in Haifa and met Shukri Effendi. They had a 1-hour meeting. And from then on, Hassan Baluzi called himself a Baha'i. That's a story that I'm always, you know, I read that story and go, Shukri Effendi must have been one heck of a teacher of the faith. Really, literally, when you think about it, he met with the Guardian for 1 hour and he completely switched over to the point where Hassan Baluzi is called by Shukri Effendi the greatest scholar of his time. His book on Baha'u'llah, his books on the Covenant, his books on so many different topics are just amazing. And as you know, there is a Hassan Baluzi chair in England that produces a lot of great material on a regular basis. But nevertheless, I wanted to share the story with you. Adib Tahirzadeh says with the passing of Abdul Baha on what the heck? What am I supposed to do? All right. He says the apostolic age of the Baha'i dispensation ends. And then we now move into the administrative age, the age of creating institutions, creating the community, creating the world order of Baha'u'llah. The formative age is where we are at now. The apostolic age ended with the passing of Abdul Baha. It was the passing of Abdul Baha, of course, was a tremendous tragedy, tremendous jolt for the Baha'i community worldwide. And when you read the will and testament of Baha'u'llah, he says that his successor will be the firstborn of the firstborn of the firstborn. And here we were with Abdul Baha's passing, Abdul Baha had no son. Abdul Baha's only son, Hussein, had died when he was about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years old. All he had was daughters, 4 surviving daughters, and a total of 13 grandchildren. So this was an age, this was a time in which the Baha'i community was somewhat at a loss until the will and testament of Abdul Baha was read, and the appointment of Shoghi Effendi as a guardian became clear to people. And to the I would say this about the Baha'i community, they almost all universally rallied around Shoghi Effendi. Remember, Shoghi Effendi was born in 1897. So he was not quite 25 when he became the guardian of the Baha'i faith. He was young, he was inexperienced, and there was a lot of almost envy, jealousy, etc. This young person, this young man at such a young age has become the head of our faith. And almost universally, outside of the family, when you think of opposition to Shoghi Effendi, you recognize that that opposition came from the so-called bearded ones in the Baha'i faith. I'm sorry if I use that term, but that's really what it was. The opposition to Shoghi Effendi came from people who were older, experienced, who knew, they knew Abdul Baha personally. They had traveled with him to Egypt, Ahmed Sorab and Aware and Palla, and all these people who thought that they knew better than what Shoghi Effendi, better than having Shoghi Effendi as the head of the Baha'i faith. What they forgot was that Shoghi Effendi had been appointed as the head of the Baha'i faith by the will and testament of Abdul Baha. And those that rallied around the will and testament of Abdul Baha didn't have a problem. There was this woman in America, she lived in Baltimore. Her name was Mildred White. Mildred White made the claim. She wrote to the commissioner, the British commissioner for Jerusalem, claiming that Abdul Baha's will was a forgery. Because how could Abdul Baha appoint this young kid to be head of the Baha'i faith? Well, Mildred White had a lot of qualities. One of her qualities was that she couldn't read Persian. I mean, literally, she's telling us that Abdul Baha's will is a forgery, when everybody who picks up Abdul Baha's will looks at the handwriting and goes, that's Abdul Baha's handwriting. And it was a sealed, the will of Abdul Baha, will and testament of Abdul Baha was a sealed document that was open in front of a lot of people that came around. And it was open in presence of the whole family. Even those that opposed Shoghi Effendi never once said that Abdul Baha's will was a forgery. The only person that laid that claim was this woman in Baltimore. Why did she do that? Because Shoghi Effendi was not Abdul Baha. Dear friends, recognize that, yes, Shoghi Effendi was not Abdul Baha. He never claimed to be Abdul Baha. He, in fact, told us that the distance that separates him from Abdul Baha is so much greater than the distance that separates Abdul Baha from Baha'u'llah. He was very clear about that. He wasn't claiming to be Abdul Baha. He was claiming to be Shoghi Effendi, the first duly appointed guardian of the Baha'i faith. And Abdul Baha's will and testament is very clear. Whoever opposes Shoghi Effendi opposes the faith. Whoever supports Shoghi Effendi supports the faith. When I was first becoming a Baha'i 52 years ago, reading the will and testament of Abdul Baha was a requirement. You had to have read the will and testament of Abdul Baha before they would let you become a Baha'i. I was true of when my wife Martha became a Baha'i 40 some years ago. She had to deepen on the will and testament of Abdul Baha. The people that deepened her were Don and Simi and Holly. Some of you might know them in Evanston. But that was a required document. And for those who are interested in how the Baha'i administration has evolved, you must read the will and testament of Abdul Baha. It's a very important document in the Baha'i faith. Okay. All right. This is a bunch of quotes from different people who talk about Abdul Baha's personal qualities. Edward Granville Brown, Professor Brown, was very impressed with Abdul Baha. Horace Hawley, for those of you that don't know the name Horace Hawley, he was Secretary of the National Assembly of America forever. And he writes a lot about Abdul Baha. In fact, some of the earliest Baha'i books that were published in America were published by Horace Hawley. Horace Hawley can be given credit for helping create the administrative order of the Baha'i faith in America, and by extension, helping create the administrative order of the Baha'i faith throughout the world. Shoghi Effendi would write letters to him, right? The Advent of Divine Justice was sent to Horace Hawley, who had it published. And then it was sent to Shoghi Effendi, told him to send it to the whole world, and he sent it to the whole world. When Shoghi Effendi, Horace Hawley created documents that would allow the National Spiritual Assembly to become incorporated. He sent those to Shoghi Effendi. Shoghi Effendi corrected the document, made changes in it, and sent it back to Horace Hawley and said, now send it to everybody in the whole world, all the National Assembly, so they can also become incorporated. So Shoghi Effendi, Ruya Khanum describes Horace Hawley as the anvil on which Shoghi Effendi founded out the administrative order of the Baha'i faith. I'm sorry, somebody's asking a question. What's going on, Chris?
No, just some feedback for 5.
Oh, all right. And send it back to all right. I'm going to skip over this, but I want to just tell you that Abdul Baha's most important documents, his will and testament, he revealed lots of prayers in Farsi that were being, and some in Arabic and Turkish, and most of these have been translated. By the way, one of the styles of Abdul Baha's revealing a prayer, he would write to you a letter and say, dear so-and-so, thank you very much for all the wonderful services, and I will pray for you as, and then he would reveal a prayer. There were times when he would be speaking in America and he would give a talk and say, so we should all pray that, whatever prayer he was revealing, he was standing up there talking, and as he was talking, he was revealing the prayers. And that's perhaps why some of the prayers that used to be so common and so well liked by the Baha'is have been taken off, because they had to be retranslated. There were some other prayers that were given to us by, there's a marriage tablet that we used to use a lot. There was, initially came to us through the writings of Ahmad Sohrab. It was published in a book called Abdul Baha in Egypt that has been removed. But Abdul Baha revealed a lot of prayers. These are some of his other books that many of you, I'm sure, have read. Some Answered Questions, Memorials to the Faithful, Paris Talk, Abdul Baha in London, Promulgation of Universal Peace. There's tons of Abdul Baha's talk. But what you should recall, what you should think about, is that this is not all. We don't have all of Abdul Baha's talks, Abdul Baha's writing. A majority of them still have to be translated and cataloged and redone. So we're still in that stage as a Baha'i community, trying to the message is similar in most of his talks. Nevertheless, some of his talks still need to be translated. All right, I'm going to stop here. Question and answers, comments. Anybody have anything to say? I'm going to stop sharing screen, I guess.
That was fascinating. Thank you. I didn't know most of that stuff, so.
Who's this? Who's speaking?
Aaron Rice.
Hi.
Oh, okay. Hi, Aaron.
Can you see me?
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I can see. I just have never met you before, Aaron. How are you?
All right.
I'm good. How are you?
So I wanted to share something that I thought would be kind of cool. I found a number of months ago, found a great website that has historical newspapers from New York. And so you kind of talked about Abdul Baha speaking in New York. So this is what somebody would have seen in a newspaper in 1912. So let me share. So this is, I forget what newspaper this is from. Does it say in the bottom here? Does not say, but this is one of many newspapers in New York at the time. Abdul Baha gives his impressions of New York. And it's interesting because you think about, people will be reading this in the newspaper, hearing about the talks, and then going to talks about this subject. And so, like, I was just looking at a little bit of his talk right here. So they published it, and it says, things like, His Holiness Christ endured all hardships and ordeals in order to found the spiritual love that the world might be illuminated. No matter how far material civilization shall have advanced, it will not prove the cause of fellowship and love, but a divine civilization has for its fundamental basis absolute love. That is why God has sent prophets in order that they may found divine civilization and connect the hearts of men with one another. So I found it interesting thinking about, people looking through the newspaper, reading this kind of, you don't see this kind of thing in newspapers that often anymore. I guess people don't even read newspapers anymore. But like, you rarely see this. It's interesting to think of like what it would have been like at that time to see this kind of thing and have this kind of dialogue. And one of the things that I think is also fascinating was how popular these talks were, particularly among the New York elite, which is very interesting. Like they were very popular amongst, some of the upper echelons of society. They were looking into these things. There was a thirst for spirituality that I just don't see anymore. But, as we mentioned, like the Hearst family, of course, William Randolph Hearst's mother became a Baha'i and stuff like that. There were a number of people, and Andrew Carnegie exchanged letters with Abdul Baha, which is fascinating,
Khalil Gibran comes to mind.
Yeah,
There's one additional thought I think I want to share with you. People often ask, what did Abdul Baha accomplish when he arrived in America? There was very few Baha'is when he arrived in America, and probably not a whole lot more when he left America. But there is something to be said, and a friend of mine, Jack McCann, who often asks the question, what would happen to you if you came face to face with Abdul Baha or Shokri Effendi? And his comment invariably is that you would be completely transformed. You would not be the same person before meeting Abdul Baha and after meeting Abdul Baha. You would be completely changed. And what Abdul Baha accomplished, and I tell the story when I talk about Martha Root, is that Martha Root was a Baha'i before Abdul Baha arrived in America and before she met him. But Martha Root was not the same person before she met Abdul Baha. and after she met Abdul Baha, she was completely transformed, completely changed. And Abdul Baha, in coming to America, accomplished one thing. He totally transformed a handful of people. The Dorothy Bakers, the Martha Ruth, the Keith Ransom Kaylors, the Marion Jacks, all these people, and a lot of these were admittedly women that got completely transformed, got completely changed. And when they got a hold of the tablets of the divine plan, Shoghi Effendi had ready-made soldiers that Abdul Baha had recreated, infused with a new spirit, who went out and conquered the world. When you think about Martha Ruth, dear friends, I just get tired reading about where she went. Just reading about it is exhausting. She went everywhere. She went every place that Abdul Baha had talked about in Tablets of the Divine Plan. That was her goal. She ran with it. And there are so many people who came across Abdul Baha and met him. There's a story of this guy named Mortensen who rides in a train and comes to Abdul Baha, and then Mortensen is a different human being. Dorothy Baker is a different human being. Abdul Baha provided Shoghi Effendi with the tablets of the divine plan and the soldiers in America and Canada that went out and conquered the world for the Baha'i faith. It is important to know that, and it is also important to know that you and I, who can never ever meet Abdul Baha, yet have the option, yet have the ability, because he says in the tablet of visitation to Abdul Baha, whoso recites this prayer with absolute sincerity, it is as if coming face to face with the servant. Remember that. We also have the opportunity to come face to face with Abdul Baha. That's it, guys.
Thank you so much, Ajit.
Anybody else? Anybody else have any questions, comments, thoughts? Nobody? You guys, did everybody have coffee this morning?
No,
I'm just trying to make sure you guys are awake.
That's a good point. I forgot to drink my coffee. I was listening, and then as you were talking, I was looking at historical newspapers of Abdul Baha, so I got distracted.
No,
Okay.
Ajit.
Right. Well,
This is
yes.
Pat. Ajit.
Okay. Hi, Pat.